about adding credit card slots to a bag. I do have a few patterns that have credit card slots in them, but they're for wallets, and so the pattern pieces are specific to the wallets, but I thought it would be cool to have credit card slots in case you wanted to have them in your bag. So basically all edges of the credit card slots are finished. So it's a quick demonstration. I'm going to jump back over to the side camera and show you how to assemble. So first off, the pattern piece is linked to in the description for the credit card slots, and you'll just need to tape two pieces of paper together. So there's page 1 and page 2, and as always, you always want to make sure that your 1 inch square and your 4 centimeter square measure exactly. So go ahead and take your ruler and just verify that really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and trim off the left-hand margin of just page 2 so that we could tape those two pieces together. Okay, so all you'll need for this project is a bit of fabric, whatever fabric you want to make the credit card slots out of, and a small piece of Shapeflex interfacing. So I'm going to go ahead and align that triangle and then tape the pieces together. So after taping together, you'll just go ahead and cut out the one pattern piece along the outside of the thick black line. So this line right here. And then I have one that I cut out earlier before the show, and this is what the piece should look like. Danny, do you mind zooming out just a little bit, just so we could get the whole piece? And so I've marked some lines on the piece. You're not going to cut on these lines. However, these lines are going to be used for folding the fabric later on. And so what I did before the show is I took my rotary cutter and quilting ruler and just made little slits along each of these lines. I didn't cut the slits all the way to the end. I kind of left a little hinge on either side just so the paper would stay together. But having those slits over there just help for getting everything marked a little bit more accurately on your fabric. Okay, so you'll be just cutting out one piece from your fabric, and you'll cut a piece of Shapeflex interfacing that's slightly smaller than the fabric, and that's marked on the page right there. Okay, so here I've got my fabric right here, and I've also got my Shapeflex interfacing, and since the Shapeflex is cut smaller, you're just going to go ahead and center it on the wrong side of your fabric and then fuse it in place. So I decided to use a solid fabric just so you could clearly see without extra printed designs getting you distracted how the folding is going to go. So I'm just going to fuse this in place really quick first. And then we're going to use that pattern piece to transfer markings on the right side of the fabric. So I recommend using chalk or another marking tool that won't remove with the heat of the iron. So friction pens are not a good candidate for this project just because the iron is going to make them disappear. But I'm going to go ahead and take my pattern piece. As you can see on the pattern piece, I've marked top over there. I'm just going to go ahead and mark a little T at the top just so I know what that top edge is. And then I'm going to lay this out. I'm going to put my pattern weight, aka my scissors, at the top edge. And then I'm just going to slide the pencil in the slits that I cut before the show and go ahead and mark the markings numbers 1 through 5. So these markings will help with pressing to get all of the slots that we need. Okay, so after I've got those markings on my fabric, I'm actually going to flip to the wrong side of the fabric, and I'm going to mark, this time I am going to use my friction pen, but I'm going to mark a border around all 4 edges that's 1/4 of an inch in from each side. I'm going to be using these markings actually to press toward the wrong side, so the goal for this is to not have any raw edges showing. Just because I'm going to be placing this panel on a bag, like the middle of my lining piece for making a bag. Okay, so now you're going to press, like I said, toward the wrong side at each of these markings. And if you have like a hemming tool, I'm a really big fan of the hot ruler. I actually couldn't find mine before the show, otherwise I'd be using it. You can go ahead and use that to get everything pressed. Just try to be as precise as you possibly can. Okay, so after you've got all 4 of the edges pressed toward the wrong side, you're just going to take this over to the sewing machine and top stitch the entire perimeter using a scant 1/4 inch seam, and a scant 1/4 inch, if you're not a quilter, is just a hair less than an actual 1/4 inch. So I've got another piece that I pressed, that I top stitched using the scant 1/4 inch. As you can see, I went all the way around the outer edge, and this is what it looks like from the back, so the raw edges are just tacked down. Okay, so here's my little T at the top. You're just going to go ahead and use all of the lines that you drew to press. So the first marking on the bottom, you're going to press up like this. And I kind of pre-pressed it before the show just because, I don't know, I just did. The second line, you're going to press it toward the back side like that. The third line, let me get that flipped up. You're going to press it so that that T is again visible to you. And then we're finally going to press, and as you can see, no raw edges are showing after you've gotten that press. So next, we're going to do some top stitching on what I like to call the hills. So these are the valleys down here, and the hills are the portions that are sticking up, which you'll see around your credit card. So I went and took this over to my sewing machine, and I top stitched each of the hills using 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so after you do that, what you're going to do next is draw a line straight down the center, and that line will be in from the left-hand side by 3 3/4 inch. So I just drew my line. As you can see, it's not been stitched yet. You're going to finish the stitching as we stitch it to the bag that you'll be using. So I have a piece that I prepared. This is for the Clydebank bag, but whatever bag you're working on, that'll work. So you just want to find where you want to place those credit card slots on your bag. You obviously want it to be centered. You're first going to stitch directly on top of the line that creates the dividers for the credit cards. And then you're going to sew the sides and the bottom using 1/8 inch seam allowance. So that will finish by attaching the pocket to your bag, and then you have room for your credit cards or your store loyalty cards, whatever you want in your bag. And that's a quick and easy way to add some credit card slots to your bag without having an extra wallet piece. So I am going to announce the winner of last week's giveaway